Okay. Sorry for making everybody wait. Please excuse me. It's so nice. Jai Gaur and Banabi Harani are here, and it's a whole different world right now. Let's see. Okay.
Where are they now?
I would show you on this camera. I'm trying to figure out how to. This thing is so complicated. It just drives me crazy. I'm on Zoom, but it doesn't. There we go. Come on. I'm so sorry. There we go. Okay. Let's see. There we go. That is Jai Gaur.
Hey, everybody,
devotional attire. And there is the better half. You know why she's called the better half, folks. That is Banabi Harani. And there is Bhakti Reed. And in the background, the secret lady, Krishna Kund Devi Dasi.
Hari, Hari.
We have a new system. We can try to see everybody. A little complicated, but going on. So, wow, good to see everybody here tonight. Lila Purushottam Prabhu. Who else is here? Maya Parchandra Prabhu. Haribol. Good to see you. Amiyat Prabhu is downstairs. Ujjwal Rasika Prabhu Mataji is here. And Gora Prabhu is here. Oh my God. Wow. It's really good. Hey, you know, Maya Parchandra Prabhu, I just got a message. Special devotees coming to Bhubaneswar next week. I shouldn't advertise this, but don't tell anybody outside this group. And we may do a little prikrama with Indradyumna Maharaj.
Yeah.
He's coming. Hey, Hare Krishna, Brenda Sundari. Good to see you. Hari Bol. We were just talking something about you the other day. It wasn't all bad, don't worry. Jai Gaur, you didn't see. Jai Gaur is here, and here, I'll do it. Jai Gaur is here. Keep going. Banabi Harani Radha. And there he is. We have this new system now with the iPad. We're able to, the camera's a lot better, and I can go around, but it's a little complicated sometimes for other stuff. Anyway, that's life in computer world, right? Okay. All right, so we had some questions and stuff. I haven't even hardly looked at them. I did last week. We're going to continue on with it. And let's see, I think we left off with Tirtha Raj Prabhu. Let me go up, Tirthakar Prabhu, I'm sorry. Okay, so I don't know how. Let's see if I can do this. By the way, on Saturday, we're supposed to have a session with Chaitanya Charan Prabhu and Amarendra Prabhu on Gopi Geet. So everybody's welcome to take part in that if you like. So let's see here if I can share the screen. I can. This is really cool. I'm using both my computer and the tablet at the same time. Okay. So Tirthakar Prabhu. He's citing Bhagavatam 1:15:47-48. It said, quote, "This abode of the Lord Sri Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavan, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in the material conception of life. But the Pandavas, being completely washed of all material contamination, attained that abode in their very same bodies. Can you comment on that point that they reached Golok?" It's such an interesting thing, isn't it? We hear in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita some very interesting things about Gopakumar. of course, his story is quite epic, how he's going from one place to another to another. And finally, he goes to the spiritual world. But after he goes to the spiritual world, it's described that sometimes he comes back and visits here. He comes to the material world, or he comes to Bhumi Vrindavan, Gokul Vrindavan, and then he goes back. And it said sometimes he can tell the difference, and other times he can't. So just using that as an example, and don't ask me to explain in detail exactly how that works, but using that as an example, we can understand that it's not such a simplistic thing, what it means to go back to Godhead, to be back to Godhead. It may be something even here. So the Pandavas are described in the Mahabharata, and it's also mentioned in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, in the 14th and 15th chapters, that they attained the spiritual world in their same bodies. Let me go back here to, actually, let me fix up this shloka here. We go to the 14th chapter of the Bhagavatam, text 47 and 48. I won't read the Sanskrit, but it's saying that by this pure consciousness, tadhyana dhritaya, by this meditation that they had in their devotional attitude, their vishuddhadishana, their intelligence became purified, and the Pandavas attained the spiritual world. And it goes on to say that the Pandavas, they attained that abode, Atmana Eva, that in their actual bodies, in their very same bodies, they attained. And Prabhupada explains something in his purport. He says, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, a person freed from the three modes of material qualities, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, and situated in transcendence, can reach the highest perfection of life without change of body. That's pretty far out. Prabhupada says a similar thing also in some of his purports in Madhya Lila chapter 8, which is even more astonishing than what he's saying here about the Pandavas. He says that devotees who are completely surrendered, that's a minor clause, but devotees who are completely surrendered to Krishna, they can attain the Lord, or excuse me, they become eternal associates of the Lord in this very body. So again, it's just making us expand a little bit on our conception of things. Okay, so Prabhupada says, without change of body, Srila Sanatana Goswami in his Hari Bhakti Vilas says that a person, whatever he may be, can attain the perfection of a twice-born Brahman by undergoing the spiritual disciplinary actions and the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, exactly as a chemist can turn gunmetal into gold by chemical manipulation. It is therefore the actual guidance that matters in the process of becoming a Brahman, even without change of body, or in going back to Godhead without change of body. Srila Jiva Goswami remarks that the word he used in this connection positively affirms this truth, and there's no doubt about this factual position. The Bhagavad Gita 14:26 also affirms this statement of Srila Jiva Goswami, when the Lord says that anyone who executes devotional service systematically without deviation can attain the perfection of Brahman by surpassing the contamination of the three modes of material nature. And when the Brahman perfection is still more advanced, by the self-same execution of devotional service, there's no doubt at all that one can attain the supreme spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan, without change of bodies. We've already discussed in connection with the Lord's returning to his abode without a change of body. Now again, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Sarita Darshani, he explains that the Pandavas, their intelligence wasn't mixed with Gyan or yoga or anything else. They were ekanta mataya, they were effects in their intelligence. They had the proper goal. They attained the dwelling place full of faults. He says this can also refer to Krishna's abode, where there's a Sudharma hall. How did they attain it? They attained it in their same spotless bodies, Virginatmana, which are devoid of any expansions, Devata expansions like Yamaraj, Yudhishthira Maharaj, his expansion is Yamaraj, they did not give up their bodies. It's a pretty far out thing. It's interesting to me, even just to ask the question, why is it far out? I think it's far out just because we're so accustomed to thinking that liberation has to be something separate from our body, isn't it? Because we're bound up with this body, and we think of everything in terms of this body, both spiritual and material. But the spiritual world doesn't go by the rules that we have. And Gauranga Mahaprabhu doesn't go by the rules that we have. And Srila Prabhupada, therefore, in Madhya chapter 8 says that someone can become a Nitya Siddha devotee even in this world. So that's a pretty amazing thing. I hope that helps some. And he goes on, he asks a few other questions which are kind of expanded on that. Let me see if I can show them here. Well, that's really cool. Okay, I'm getting used to this. I'm playing with two different devices at the same time I'm logged in. So his next question is our inclination for listening to certain pastimes? By the way, Tirthakarpa, was that okay? My comments about your question?
And that point that they reach Goloka, because I was looking actually word by word in that shloka, and there is no Goloka, but Srila Prabhupada specifically translated as a reaching Goloka Vrindavana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't say that any comment about that. But here in the 14th chapter, the chapter before, it says Stanam Virajena Atmana Eva. He Bhakti Jiva Goswami is stressing very certainly they attain the abode of the Lord. Prabhupada is saying Goloka Vrindavan. Why not Goloka Vrindavan? And some of your questions coming up will have something a little more to do with this, I think. Why not Goloka Vrindavan? Because they're devotees of Krishna. They're not devotees of Narayan or like that. Of course, someone may say that they're devotees of Vasudeva Krishna, but still Vasudeva Krishna also, he's there within the spiritual world. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur even says that there's in his Raghavartma Chandrika, he says that devotees who worship Radha Krishna in Vaidhi Marg, in the mood of awe and reverence, they go to the spiritual world and they worship Radha Krishna in the form of Lakshmi Narayan. But they're worshiping Radha Krishna. So again, it's a very technical, difficult thing. That's about all I could comment on that. Is that okay, Tirthakar? Good questions. And number two, he's saying, is our inclination for listening to certain pastimes or for certain service in our conditioned state always influenced by our conditioned nature? Is it also part of our Swarup? Well, who can answer that question? I once asked that question to my Guru Maharaj. My question to him was that when the Guru, when Premi Bhakta Guru, who can see the Swarup of his Guru, first question was, I asked him, when can he see the Swarup? And Guru Maharaj, his answer was that it's not, like I said, it's like he's walking down the street and everybody that he's looking at, he just sees their spiritual forms or whatever. And he said, no, it's not like that. He said, but after some time, he comes to see that, which would make sense to me also, because as we were discussing in a previous session, the Guru is Sarvagya, but what does it mean that he's Sarvagya? As someone asked Srila Prabhupada, how many windows are in the Empire State Building? And Prabhupada said, how many bubbles are in a mirage? He may know, he may not know. And I told the story about our friend Srimati Mataji and how before she joined, she was getting up and meditating on making the sunrise. And that day was a cloudy day in Seattle, Washington, where she was at. And then later, some friend told her, hey, there's some sadhu here from India. He's giving a talk. Would you like to come and hear him? And she went, and Prabhupada was speaking. She couldn't understand anything that Prabhupada said with his accent. But Prabhupada was speaking. All of a sudden, Prabhupada stopped, looked right at her, and said, you cannot make the sunrise. And there's different examples like that, where Prabhupada knew the heart of someone. So if someone asked Prabhupada how many windows in the Empire State Building, and Prabhupada said 14,392, he might do that, and it might be the exact correct answer by the super soul. So the answer initially, just approach this subject, how the guru is Sarvagya, how he knows everything, that's up to Krishna. The devotee is so absorbed in Krishna, he doesn't know anything but Krishna. And so it means he only knows what Krishna wants him to know, what Krishna wants him to see. So coming more closely to your question, is our inclination for hearing certain pastimes or for doing certain service always influenced by our conditioned nature? Is it part of our soup? So I'd ask my Guru Maharaj that question. When he gives a name to someone, is that indicative of their something about their swarup in the spiritual world? And he said, no. He didn't seem real happy with that question. And perhaps he thought I was being speculative. I don't know. So I would be cautious to comment about that. I wouldn't say necessarily that it's always just impossible that we can understand something, because the nature of the swarup, it's not something which is confined by our material laws and material reasoning. It may leak out a little bit here and there for certain persons at certain times in ways that other people don't know. At the same time, I would be very cautious to be sentimental and start thinking, oh, I remember when I first joined in Los Angeles, I'd been a devotee for 6 months or something. And I don't remember where in the world I got it. Maybe I found it in some antique shop in Los Angeles, or someone gave me something, but I had this old deity of Garuda. And I thought, I remember thinking, I'm so shameless, excuse me, but I thought, I'm really cool. Now I've got, this is my Ishtadev. I'm different than everybody else. I'm into Garuda. Everybody else is into Radha Krishna or Gaurnitai or Vishnu, but I'm into Garuda. I'm in this special kind of thing. And it was just complete speculation of a very neophyte young devotee. So we should be careful, I would suggest, about that. Someone I saw recently, I don't want to say any names, but someone, astrologer, he's telling devotees what is their Ishtadev according to their astrology. And I saw some discussions online about it, and devotees are saying, wow, that's just amazing. It's changed my life. Now I realize that my Ishtadev is Narayan in some case, or this or that. And okay. I see it as like a toy. Actually, I'll tell you a little something, a little confidential thing. I have some friends at Radhakund, and some of them are ISKCON devotees. So there's a disciple there of Jayapataka Maharaj who's been there for, 20, 30 years. He does like 2 parikramas a day of Govardhan and chants over 1 lakh a day or 2 lakhs. And he's Prabhupada, man, he has Prabhupada's deity in his ashram, and he worships his Guru Maharaj, but he's also staying at Radhakund. And he knows all the Radhakund Babajis, and he knows all the stuff. So we were talking once with him, and he told us some interesting things. He said that at that time, the most popular Babaji at Radhakund, who was giving Siddha Pranali to Western devotees, a lot of Russian devotees were coming, and he was giving Siddha Pranali to them and telling them, your Ekadas Bab is this, your name in the spiritual world is this, and your color is this, and your dress is this, and your husband is this, and your service is this, and 11 different items. And he would tell them that this is very secret, and you shouldn't tell anybody else. So being little young Western devotees, what was the first thing they did? When they went back to the ashram, they said, Gurudev told me that I'm, Bhuta Manjari or whatever it was. They told him the name. And he said that when they said, the other devotee said, wait a minute, that's what he told me. And someone else says, that's what he told me also. And so they went back and they said something to him. And he didn't really comment, but after they left the room, he turned to one of his close disciples there, and he said, they're like children who want a toy. And therefore, I'm just giving them something to keep them entertained. And in this regard, and this is a little side topic about Siddha Pranali and things, historically speaking, 50 years ago or 100 years ago, when someone might come to Radhakund maybe they were, I know of one person who was living in Dhaka in Bangladesh, and he was a Gaudiya Vaishnav. He was a wealthy businessman. He had a son and daughter, and he was a Vaishnav. When they finally got older, they got married, then he left home and he went to Radhakund to surrender everything and dedicate his life to Krishna. And he was there, he was chanting like 64 rounds a day and doing very, very austere things. And he wanted to get Siddha Pranali. They wouldn't give it to him. It took him like 5 or 6 years or something. 50, 60 years ago, that was the system. Even as recently as maybe 30, 40 years ago, someone wanted to get Siddha Pranali at Radhakund. It was a big deal. And they wouldn't give it to you maybe unless you're chanting 1 or 2 or maybe 3 lakhs a day and you're a very serious person. Nowadays, it's another kind of thing. And at least in the words of this particular Vaishnav, because they're like children, they just want something. So I remember those examples, and I'm a little shy personally about wanting to adopt Garuda as my Ishtadev and meditating on that. Rather, let's just do something that's natural. When it happens naturally to us, when Krishna brings that to us, then we can embrace that. We can accept that. That's my suggestion, Tirtha Karprabhu. Is that okay? Tirtha Karprabhu?
Yes, very nice. Because I heard this from one sannyasi, this thing. So therefore, I wanted to get a little more clear on it. And but this point, what you said, that actually, if we are inclined for something, we really like something, why not to go for it, and without considering what is happening in the future, right?
Sometimes something may leak out, so to speak. Sometimes, more often, it may be our speculation. That's a more common thing. But at the same time, even if it's our speculation, just like I sometimes devotees have dreams about Krishna, and somebody else says, you ate too much pizza last night, it's not real, whatever. Maybe it's not real. Who's the judge to say what's real and what's not real? Who's the judge to say that when I come in front of the deities and I look at the deities, is my vision transcendental or is it mundane? Well, it's mundane. I just see these are deities made out of wood, or these are deities made out of brass, these are deities made out of marble. Or maybe I may feel some kind of inspiration. I may feel some kind of sentiment. Then should I think, I'm like a sahajya, it's not real? I had this dream, it's not a real dream. Well, I think it's a lot better to have a dream about Krishna than to have a dream about the Beatles or some mundane thing. Well, why not? That's just pretty good. Even if you have a strange dream about Krishna and he's riding on a unicorn or something and some strange kind of thing, but still, at least it's Krishna, you're remembering something. That's certainly better. So similarly, if we feel some inspiration by certain pastimes, by some certain service, what's the harm in going about that? Even we may be conditioned, and maybe just some reflection of our conditioned nature, but if it gives us some inspiration in the process of bhakti, why not? I just don't see any harm with that. So let me share the screen again. We'll go on to your next question. Tirtha Karprabhu. Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavatam, second canto, this is an interesting question. It is his causeless mercy that the Lord appears in every society or species of life, but he's never to be considered one of them. So it's said in the Bhagavatam that the Lord appears in every species of life. So Tirtha Karprabhu's very apt question. Did we ever hear about any of the Lord's incarnations as insects or plants? I mean, I'm sorry to put it this way, but is there a cockroach avatar of the Lord? Is there a bunny rabbit avatar of the Lord? Is there blades of grass? Why not? The Lord appears in so many different ways. Sorry, Krishna? Huh?
It doesn't mention cockroach, but it does mention different things.
Yeah, Brihad Bhagavatamrita mentioned, but it doesn't give details about, when the Lord comes as a guinea pig or, whatever, gerbil. And I'm sorry, Hare Krishna, what kind of pastimes that he performs and how he kills this demon or that. There's a story we hear here in Orissa. There's an incarnation of the Lord who came as a cat. There's a local story about that. And he's a partial incarnation of Lord Nrsingadev. It's in Western Orissa. And as a deity, he's still there waiting to catch this Mushikasura, who was a partial incarnation of Ganesh's mouse carrier as a demon. And that cat Nrsingadev is waiting to kill him. So we know of that pastime. We know that in the Bhagavatam, according to Sanatana Goswami, the Bhagavatam is much, much bigger in the heavenly planets, that we only have a partial part of it. So just as I'm mentioning about this cat incarnation, and we know some little stories about it, similarly, in other parts of India, there may be other stories about other incarnations, local stories, or other parts of the Bhagavatam and the heavenly planets that give descriptions that we haven't heard about. But no, in direct answer to your question, I haven't heard about any other stories about the Lord's incarnation as a cactus or a tamal tree or this or that. I know a story about the Lord appearing as a tamal tree, actually. We tell that sometimes, but again, it's a local tradition. Is that okay, Teta Karpava? Okay, let me go on to your next question. I'm sorry I'm taking maybe too long here. I think we have a number of questions. Other devotees have asked a few things. Okay. This is the one I was waiting to get to. This is really cool. It's a letter Prabhupada wrote to Saradiya. Now, bear in mind one thing, by the way. Saradiya in 1968, I think she was 16 or 17 years old. And Prabhupada told her that you can move into the temple, but you have to stay in high school and no boyfriends. That was Srila Prabhupada's instruction to her. And later on, he got her married, and it was quite a drama. But they did pretty. She just passed away a couple of years ago. A very senior, very dear disciple, Srila Prabhupada, one of Prabhupada's dear daughters. So Prabhupada wrote her this letter, 12th of December, 1968, quote, "To answer your second question, you should know that Arjuna and Kunti Devi are not in Krishna Lok. They are associated with Krishna only in the material world." So Tirtha Karpabhu says, can you comment on that? Nice, simple question. Yeah, I have some thoughts about that. First of all, I did some searching after you wrote that question, and I couldn't find something that I was looking for. This is a famous letter, and a lot of devotees have been very curious about it. I remember somewhere, I'm pretty sure it's in Priti Sandarbha of Jiva Goswami, maybe Lila Purushottam Prabhu or Tri Yoga or Goni Taipa, where someone else has some knowledge of this. But I remember seeing somewhere where Jiva Goswami says a similar thing, that there are certain associates of the Lord who are eternal associates, but they're only associates here in the material world. That's pretty far out. Now, I couldn't find that reference, but there's another reference that I did find. Let me bring that up. This is from the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 14, text number 37. Prapancham nisprapanchopi vidambayasi bhutale prapana jitanananda sandoham pratitam prabho. My dear master, although you have nothing to do with material existence, you come to this earth and imitate material life just to expand the varieties of ecstatic enjoyment for your surrendered devotees. So, and this is a BBT purport. It's speaking about, it's paraphrasing Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary, that the Lord is situated always within the material world. And the Lord assumes forms and relationships similar to those found in the material world, but those relationships and forms are not false and temporary. They're transcendental and ever existing. Although they're eternal and transcendental, they appear similar to material activities. So then he gives a wonderful example that just as a lamp doesn't shine as brightly in sunlight as it does in the shade, or as a diamond doesn't look as brilliant on a silver platter as it does on a plate of blue glass Govinda's pastimes do not appear as astonishing in Vaikuntha as they do in the material world. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on this verse, explains that the purpose of the material world is for Krishna's pleasure. Everything is for Krishna's pleasure. And this material world is also for Krishna's pleasure. But there's more of a drama here. And two examples here are given that if you take a candle and you go outside in the middle of the bright day and you light the candle, you're not going to attract a crowd. Nobody's going to care about it. But you take the same candle in a dark room and you light it, and it's so beautiful and so brilliant. In the same way, like you take a diamond, you put it on a silver plate, nobody can see it again. But if you put it on a piece of blue velvet or something, then that diamond looks very wonderful. So in the same way, Krishna's pastimes, they appear more astonishing here in the material world. And this is a point which Jiva Goswami makes in the beginning of Gopal Champu, and also Kavi Karnapur makes in the beginning of Ananda Vrindavan Champu, that actually the pastimes that go on in Gokul Vrindavan are superior to the pastimes that take place in the spiritual world. Now, that's a little bit hard for us maybe to wrap our head around, because when we think, well, wait a minute, because we're always thinking in a self-centered way, right? And then immediately we think, well, gee, Krishna being with me here in the material world, that's better than him being with the gopis in the spiritual world. That doesn't equate to me. It's not saying like that. But when Krishna comes here, he brings the gopis, he brings Radharani, and the pastimes which go on here, this is an annex, a part of the spiritual world. It's not that there's anything mundane. Everything is meant to be spiritual. Everything is meant for the pleasure of Krishna. So when he comes here, he gets pleasures that he can't get in the spiritual world. My Guru Maharaj made some comments about some points similar to this. I remember him saying that in the spiritual world, and this is a really far out thing, I found some similar commentaries like this. In the spiritual world, the Gita says, there's no sun, there's no moon, there's no fire. So that means there's no cooking, right? So when Krishna wants to have a hot lunch or something, then he comes to this world. But in another sense also, there's no difference between this world and the spiritual world for Krishna. And if Gopa Kumar can be going back and forth, and sometimes he understands the difference and sometimes he doesn't understand the difference, that's it. This world is meant for Krishna's pleasure. So we don't distinguish between the Lord and his associates who are in the spiritual world, and there may be devotees here in the material world. In a similar way, Srila Prabhupada in one purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita, I'd have to look it up, I could find it, it's Nancha Leela. He gives a long list, I often quote this purport, of associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who he comments, he says, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said there's no evidence that they ever went to Vrindavan, but they were staying in Jagannath Puri. And that, you may say, is a mundane example. We're not talking about liberation. But these are associates of Mahaprabhu. And they're already liberated. So they may be here in Jagannath Puri. They may go to Vrindavan. They may not go to Vrindavan. So Kunti Devi and Arjuna, they're eternal associates of Krishna. They're always with Krishna. That's the spiritual world. But those pastimes may be going on what we consider to be the material world. It's not the material world because they're with Krishna. But it is the material world because Krishna is very kind and he manifests his pastimes in this very dark place where people who are very demoniac can get some opportunity to hear something about him. And therefore Krishna says, Jamma karma cha me divyam, that all of my birth, my pastimes, these are all dibya, they're transcendental. Evam yo viti tattvata. And if you know, you understand them in tattva, then chaktamam, you won't have to take birth here again. You'll be in the spiritual world. Is that okay, Tirthakar Prabhu? Tirthakar Prabhu, you ask a lot of questions, some good questions too. Not easy, very thoughtful things. Thank you. So I'm going to go on to Tirthakar Prabhu's fifth question. I think he's got 7 altogether. We're going on here. So it says here, this is another purport from the Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 15, text 42. Thus annihilating the gross body of 5 elements into 3 qualitative modes of material nature, he merged them in one nescience and then absorbed that nescience in the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. And he says, can you please explain a bit about this method? Well, I can say something about it, but I can't say that I can explain a lot because I haven't really practiced that method. And I'm not sure that you want to practice that method either. I kind of would be surprised. What is it speaking about here? This is speaking about Sankhya. This is speaking something about yoga. And my understanding about this is that it's not necessarily literal, but it may be figurative. And that through the process of Sankhya, through the process of neti, this is transcendental, this is not transcendental, through the process of Gyan, someone annihilates the gross body of 5 material elements into the 3 quality modes of material nature. That can be done in a conceptual kind of way. And it may be, you may also say it's in kind of a realized way through the process of Sankhya or Gyan. But the final conclusion is then absorbing that nescience in the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. This is a process of Gyan. This is something we're trying to do in our own strength. And it's a process of Sankhya, trying to understand the difference between what is material nature and what is spiritual nature. A lot more could be said about that. I don't think, frankly, it's really so relevant for all of us as Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Is that okay, Tirthakar Prabhu?
Yeah, I was a little confused because that's about Maharaj Yudhishthir. And actually, next
Yudhishthir Maharaj, oftentimes in the Pandavas, they're being used as an example, but they're also eternal associates of the Lord. So sometimes some examples being used of them that apparently they're doing this Gyan or this yoga, just as we're hearing in the 47th chapter, the 10th canto, in the Brahmara Gita, how Krishna is speaking Gyan to the gopis. And his purpose in speaking Gyan is really not for the gopis, but it's parokshavad. He's saying one thing for the gopis, but he's covering it. Apparently, it's something else for another person. So then the next question would come to then what is it for Yudhishthir Maharaj? In this case, well, in this case with Yudhishthir Maharaj, well, first of all, Yudhishthir Maharaj doesn't have a material body. And so there's no question of him annihilating the gross body and all that. But when it's speaking about this in the case of Yudhishthir Maharaj, we get some conception that Yudhishthir, he has that material body, but it's a spiritual body. He's going back to the spiritual world with it. And he's absorbing, he's annihilating that body in the modes of material nature, merging him in nescience and absorbing that nescience in the self in Brahman. But which Brahman is he meditating on? He's meditating on the self as Brahman. He's meditating on the self as a servant, because Yudhishthira Maharaj is a devotee. And then he's meditating on the Lord as part of Brahman. So I would suggest that, although I don't know of any commentaries from our acharyas speaking like this, but in the same way that Krishna is giving 2 messages at the same time, one to the gopis and another to the Gyanis who are watching, to cheat those Gyanis, those foolish persons who are attached to Gyan. So in a similar way, Yudhishthira Maharaj is also a great devotee, and there may be a double meaning here. I would prefer to look at it like that, strongly, on the basis of the example of the 47th chapter, the 10th canto. Is that a little satisfying? Okay, 2 thumbs up. All right. And then question number 6. Let's go back to there. Hey, Krishna Cohen, could you do me a big favor? Oh, never mind. Just wait a second. I'm thirsty. excuse me. So again, Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 15. And speaking in this case about Parikshit Maharaj. Then he posted Brajanath, Braja, the son of Aniruddha, the grandson of Lord Krishna, at Mathura, as the king of Surasena. Afterwards, Maharaj Yudhishthira performed the Prajapatya sacrifice and placed in himself the fire for quitting household life. And Tirthankar Prabhu's question is, why specifically Braja, the king of Mathura, since Parikshit was the emperor of the whole world? Well, there's a difference between the emperor, in this case, and the king. And there was a lot of local kings. Ramachandra, he appointed his younger brother, what was his name? Not Bharat, Shatrughna. He appointed Shatrughna as the king of Mathura, previously in Treta Yuga. But Ramachandra was the main king of this world. So Brajanath was the particular king of Mathura. And why specifically Brajanath? I can't comment on that very much, except that we know that Brajanath had a big service to do. And he installed a lot of deities. He did a lot of wonderful service. But Parikshit Maharaj was the emperor of the whole world. So Brajanath was taking care of a particular place, a very important place. And his particular duty, apparently, we can see it as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would quote Phalina Parichate, that we judge something by the fruit of it. That's one way to understand something. What was the fruit? What was the fruit of Brajanath being king of Mathura? His fruit was that he revealed so many tirthastalis, so many sacred places. He installed so many different deities and things. So based on seeing the fruit of that, I would feel pretty confident to say that that's at least a particular reason why he was posted as king there under Parikshit Maharaj. Is that okay, Tirthankar Prabhu?
Yes, very nice. I was wondering, was there more grandsons of Krishna, or he was like the only one remaining also, or at the time?
That's an interesting question. I'm not real clear. That I could guide you a little in that. The Markandeya Purana has some description about that, some details that we've, and maybe some Matsya Purana, Markandeya or Matsya, maybe it's Matsya Purana, I think Matsya, some details about after Krishna's disappearance of the world and Arjun taking the Mahishis, the queens, and being attacked. And it was actually expansion of Krishna who came, Krishna expanded to some different robbers and came and took those queens. There may be something more there about that. These are only details that I know of, Prabhuji, for that. Thank you. And let's see. I think you've got another one or two questions. Two more questions after that. You numbered them 8 and 9, but I think it's more like 7 and 8. So I'm just going to change that. So the question is that from when we speak about Adosha Dutta Sadhu Sangha, that verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, from Shraddha, double D, to Prem, is that somehow reflecting Kanisha, Madhya, and Uttam? No. You may have devotees who are Uttam in terms of faith, and the gopis themselves, they have faith. They have a certain type of faith. And you may also have someone who has some Kanishta kind of prema. They have some little type of prema. They have some beginning type of that. You can't, I've never seen any direct correlation being given between those stages and in comparing the Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttam. Does anybody else has any other comments? I don't know. Lila Purushottam, you have any thought about that?
It sounds perfectly logic to me what you commented. It's just I'm not aware of any.
You're going in and out.
Really? Wow, that's strange sound.
Because you can't hear the questions.
Oh, okay. I'm going to repeat your questions. We've got a group of devotees here. Krishna Kumar's turning it on, and it gets kind of an echo in here. Anyway, yours, Tirthankar Prabhu, any, is that okay to you? Makes sense? Any further questioning about that?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's already half answering the next question. And
Okay, let's go on. You have one question left here. This is an interesting one too. Is it possible to attain Krishna from Kanishta or Madhyam level? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said that a Kanishta can liberate 3 generations front and back. Not only Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said that, but the Narada Pancharatra describes that you just get initiated. Just by getting initiated, 100 generations get liberation of your family. So is it possible to attain Krishna from, of course it's possible for someone to attain Krishna. The demons sometimes attain Krishna from the position of Kanishta and Madhyam. Yes and no, but at the same time, when we think of Krishna in particular, Krishna is attained by prema. Krishna says, Bhakti Mama Bijanati Yavan Yaschasmi Tattvataha. And that Krishna, he reserves a right to only be known to the gopis and the Brijbasis. So when we say Krishna, we can ask different questions. Which Krishna? The son of Nanda Maharaj, or Dwarkadish Krishna, Mathureshwar Krishna, or Vaikunteshwar Krishna. There's also kind of a Krishna in Vaikuntha. Which Krishna is that? And what does it mean to attain him? Isn't it a fact that someone may be a Kanishta Adhikari, but they're chanting the holy name? Can't we say that that person's attained Krishna? Don't we celebrate when someone gets initiated? Why do we celebrate when someone gets initiated? Because they've attained Krishna. Now, when we say attain Krishna, I think I'm giving a different definition to what you're referring to here. We're saying it in a broad way, okay, he's got initiation, that means he's gotten Krishna, but in another sense, he's not gotten Krishna, right? Because he's not seeing Krishna constantly, and he doesn't know Krishna completely, because Bhakti Mama Bijanati Yavan Yaschasmi Tattvataha. The only way to completely know Krishna is through pure bhakti. But still, isn't it a fact that someone who has the holy name, or someone who has Gayatri Mantra, they've attained Krishna? And therefore, Raghunath Das Goswami, he says that Namashresha Manamapi Sachiputa Matrasrupa, and he gives a long list of things which we owe to Gurudev. And he says that I've gotten Krishna, I've gotten Rupa Goswami, I've gotten Srimati Radharani, I've gotten Radhakun, I've gotten Braj, I've gotten all these things. I've gotten the topmost holy name, beginning with the topmost holy name. I've gotten all these things from my Gurudev. And what does that mean? He's saying from the beginning, I've gotten a Namashrestam. So he gives us, I think, a little clue there, that I can say that I've gotten Namashrestam in one sense, because the conception that my Guru Maharaj has is Shrestha. It's the topmost conception. It's the Gaudiya conception. And if we get initiated in the holy name from a guru in our Gaudiya line, isn't that Namashrestam? In one sense. But when we say Namashrestam in another sense, doesn't it mean that I've realized the holy name, that Abhinatvanamamino, that Krishna is not different from his name? And as we gave the example, I think in our last session, the famous story of Rupa Goswami, who chanted a few names or one name, and suddenly he saw this wonderful pastime of Radha and Krishna. Name Prasvatito Hai Rupa Guna Karma. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in Harinam Chintamani that from the holy name will blossom all Krishna's qualities, Krishna's form, Krishna's qualities, and Krishna's pastimes from that holy name. So we've gotten Krishna in that sense. Or maybe someone's gotten Krishna in the sense that Narad Muni got Krishna as a son of a maidservant in his previous life. And there was a spurti. And just one moment he saw Krishna and heard Krishna, and then Krishna disappeared. So he attained Krishna, and then he lost Krishna. But did he attain Krishna? Who's really attained Krishna? That's another question. Did Vasudeva and Devaki attain Krishna? Did the residents of Mathura Dwarka attain Krishna? Did the residents of Vrindavan all attain Krishna? Or is there a difference between the Ratak and Patrak's attainment of Krishna and the attainment of the gopis? In one sense, because the gopis have attained Krishna in a higher sense, in a more complete sense, someone could say they've really attained Krishna, whereas Ratak and Patrak attained something. But they also attain Krishna a lot more than we have, probably. But comparing them to the gopis, so when we speak about attaining Krishna, we have to ask the question, what does that mean? So is that, there's some reflections on that. Is that helpful, Tirthakai Prabhu?
Yeah, well, I just read, it's actually from your Guru Maharaj, and about this disciple, she left the body in Puri, and you probably know that. And then he confirmed that she was born as a cow in Svargaloka. And then and the reason was that she had material desires. And of course, we know, for example, Dhruva Maharaj, he had also material desires and he attained Krishna, right? Of course, as you said, like Narada Muni, similar. So I was just wondering that, because as you said that we have to have actually prema to go to the spiritual world. I mean, it's not completely, because in Vaikota there are some stages of prema there are some mixtures of jnana, but let's say we have to have prema in order to
You have to have some love.
Yeah. So is it possible on Kanishta or Mariama to already develop that certain stage of prema, or it's only come at Uttama platform?
My understanding is that by the mercy of Krishna, or by the mercy of some great devotee, that may happen. We shouldn't try to imitate that and think that we're going to get some honorary degree, so to speak. But that may happen with someone on a lower platform. That Mataji, by the way, she was, her name was Jamuna, and she's married to one of my godbrothers. She left her body in France. And before she left, she was a very interesting person. Let me just tell this story about her, and I'm not trying to comment on it. How can we comment on something like this? But in her case, she was a very, very simple lady. She was just a housewife. She's only married one time to one man. She was very dedicated to her husband. And she was just a simple person who liked to serve the devotees, who liked to cook for them. She wasn't one of these big persons who gave classes or did kirtans even or anything. She was just always a lady in the back, just cooking and cleaning and like that. And she was very, very dedicated to Guru Maharaj. And Guru Maharaj was clearly very pleased with her. Later, she got cancer. And at one point, she was lying on her deathbed, and suddenly she became hysterical. And she started screaming and shouting, and my godbrother came running in, her husband, and what? And she was just, she couldn't even talk for like a minute. She's just sobbing and weeping. And she said, he was here. Who was here? Krishna came and he sat down right there and he looked at me and she thought that she saw Krishna. And later she had a similar vision of Srimati Radharani. And Guru Maharaj said that it was real. So sometimes I think we make these things so inaccessible. We're thinking these things are only for very, very big people. But there's different devotees we've had in our movement who've realized something about their Swarup before they left. And some people may say, well, yeah, but they didn't know Sanskrit. They didn't know Sanskrit grammar. They didn't know commentaries in the Bhagavatam. And she's just a housewife. But if someone's very, very simple and they're very, very devoted, we don't know. There's a wonderful story some of you may have seen about one Russian Mataji, which I was reading, and initially I was thinking, this is sounds like really Sahaja Russian kind of stuff, you know. There's this lady, she was so attached to her deity, and she decided that Krishna wants to play. So she got a little electric car, and she would stick the deity in the electric car, and he would drive around, and she would play like dolls or something. And it's a little weird. And I don't remember, maybe some of you may remember the story more brilliantly, but more clearly. But later she ended up going to South India to Ahobalam and staying in a very remote place and maintaining a temple there of Lord Nrsingadev, and the deity called for her and wanted her to be there. And that's where she left her body, rendering service to the Lord like that. A very amazing personality. So therefore, one lesson that I learned is we should be very, very careful and not try to judge devotees, because we just don't know. And I'm very careful. Even my Guru Maharaj is a story I tell sometimes. There was one devotee that I know, he's a friend of mine, one of my godbrothers. Before he was initiated, he liked to experiment with a lot of different mind-altering substances, like LSD and different things like that. He was really into that. And then he joined, and later he went to see Guru Maharaj privately, and he said, Guru Maharaj, I was chanting Hare Krishna, and I saw Lord Nrsingadev. And Guru Maharaj looked around the room, and he leaned very close to him, and he said, don't tell anyone. Now, that's humorous, right? On another occasion, I was in a room in Singapore with Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj. And there was one, he was in a room alone. There was 3 or 4 senior devotees in there with him. And some Mataji came in the room, and she was very sentimental. And she came and she said, Guru Maharaj, will you tell me, what is my Manjari Swarup? And as I recall, she couldn't even say the word Manjari properly, you know. And Narayan Maharaj kind of looked both ways, and he leaned forward to her and he said, your name is Bhuta Manjari. And she started crying in ecstasy. Oh, Guru Maharaj, thank you so much. And all the devotees who were in the room started laughing hysterically, because Bhuta means ghost. In Indian Sanskrit, and Maharaj was just playing with her, so to speak. But he also was being serious in a way. And Srila Prabhupada is another story where some devotee came to him and said, Prabhupada, when I chant, I see this red light. And Prabhupada didn't tell him, you're in Maya, that's stupid. Or he just said, just keep chanting and it'll go away. So my faith is that I want to be very, very careful. My real thing is I do not want to put myself in the role of being the judge of other persons, because it's quite contrary to the principle of being a Vaishnav. It's a very, very important thing. And as we were discussing recently in our WhatsApp group, we need to discern things. We need to have some discrimination. But there's some subtle difference between discrimination and judgment. Judgment is what we do on Judgment Day. And I try to analyze someone and decide, I know they're like this or they're like that. Whereas discerning something we have to have some ability to see what's good and what's bad. We have to distinguish in that way. That's a very important thing. So I don't want to put myself in the role of trying to judge who's a proper person, who's not a proper person. So is that okay, Tirthakar Prabhu?
Yeah, it's very nice. I actually heard similar thing from Pankaj Prabhu. He said that he didn't see that many people to manifest bhava or prema in their lives, but he said that he saw many people going home back to Godhead.
Yeah. At the same time, too, I'd like to comment that someone may go back to Godhead in one sense very easily. There's a movie, I don't know what it's called. I didn't see the movie, but it's called The Devil and Mr. Jones, and Bill Cosby was in it. And I can't remember, there's some other famous actor. Anyways, the devotees, Vatsal Prabhu, my former temple president, and a number of devotees were in that movie. And there's some guy walking across the street, and all of a sudden there's a bus of Hare Krishna devotees coming down the street. The guy doesn't look, the bus hits him, and he dies. And he goes to hell. And he's down there and he sees the devil and whatever. And meanwhile, it's showing what's happening back in this world. This is just a mundane Hollywood movie. The devotees had gotten out of the bus and they were all, wow, my God, this guy just died. And what did they do? They're Hare Krishna devotees. They started doing kirtan around the dead body. in the movie. I think Agnidev Prabhu was there, some others, and they all started doing kirtan. And then what happened, this guy went to hell, and in the movie, the devil or whatever told him, okay, you can go back and try to get it together again. And so all of a sudden the guy opens his eyes, and there's this whole kirtan party doing kirtan, jumping up and down around him, and he opens his eyes, oh my God. and here I am. So it's just to get liberation is not such a difficult thing. If you're walking across the street and you get hit by a bus as Hare Krishna devotees, and the last thing that you hear is the Hare Krishna mantra, then you might get some liberation. But do we want that? That's not our goal. And we should understand very clearly why that's not our goal. We want something much, much greater than that. If we get liberated now, the example is given just like if you pick a rose flower as a bud, the flower won't develop any further. That's it. So similarly, in general cases, in Gopakumar, before someone gives him as an example, Gopakumar is a very extraordinary case. Generally, when someone goes back to the spiritual world, it's like, oh my God, this is it. This is the most amazing thing. And generally, wherever that's at, whether it's in Vaikuntha, whether they're with Viraha, Nishringa, Matsya Karma, whatever form of the Lord it is in the Vaikuntha planets, they're completely satisfied with that form, and they can't even consider that there might be something more than that. So in that sense, the flower doesn't develop any further. And therefore, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, I could look this up if someone really wants. I've got it somewhere in my notes. I believe it's in Jiva Goswami's commentary. He says that sometimes the Lord, is a shloka he quotes, that sometimes the Lord makes someone who's chanting the holy names, someone's chanting the holy names, he makes them take birth again and again until they get Krishna prema. Because just to get liberation, so what? As Chaitanya Charitamrita says, mukti tucha hoy, nama basa hoite. That mukti, liberation, is tucha phala. It's a very insignificant result of even nama bas. We don't place so much stress upon that. Okay, is that all right, Tirthakar Prabhu? You have really brilliant questions. Thank you, Prabhuji. I really appreciate it. I'm
just sorry, just I took so much time.
No, that's okay. You didn't take so much time. Your questions are short. I'm just long-winded. That's problems with me. Okay, so let's go on. We've got Braja Banita. I'm just reading the questions in the order that we got them from. And Braja Banita and you asked questions in our last session. So Braja Banita asked a nice question. Let me put it up on the screen. Just a second here. Okay. Are you there, Braja Banita? I saw you a little earlier. Yeah, there you are. Hi, Krishna. Nice to see you. It's so nice, by the way, for listening. We've got Jai Gaur and Bana Biharani and Bhakta Reed here with us today. It's really nice to be with devotees in the flesh. Okay, so here's Braja Banita's question. She's mentioning that today that her Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj, spoke to a group of Russian devotees about how to understand if we're acting, behaving properly. And she said that he quoted some shloka that we should act according to our qualifications. So she's asking if I could develop and expand on that statement. She says, I know it's kind of off topic, but I try to relate my material life to spiritual. It's not off topic. It's perfectly on topic. That's the real topic. Because if we don't relate where we're coming from, then it's all just sentimental. It's all just theoretical. It's very important that we relate where we're at. So there's a couple of verses I want to share with you, and I think 3. And I think he was quoting from the 11th canto, the Bhagavatam. But first of all, there's this verse from the 3rd canto, 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This verse, incidentally, interestingly, appears twice in Bhagavad Gita, word for word, with 1 or 2 words difference in the 18th chapter and the 3rd chapter. So this is from the 3rd chapter. Krishna tells Arjuna, Shreyan Swadharma, Viguna, Sparadharma Svanusita, that Shreyan, what is auspicious, is Swadharma, your Dharma. You do your dharma. Part of dharma is svanustita. To do someone else's dharma, that's a difficult thing. Even if svanustita, you can do it better than that person, maybe better than your particular dharma. So dharma nidanam shreya. Doing your dharma, it's better to do your dharma, even if you can't do it perfectly, than shreya paro dharma bhayavaha, to try to do someone else's dharma. That's bhayavaha. That's a very, very dangerous, fearful. Bhaya means fearful. It's a very fearful type of thing to try to engage in. So then the question comes, what is my swadharma? Well, our swadharma is that thing which is given to us by according to our varna and our ashram. But then, for those persons who are living in Israel, you may not have a very clear understanding of your varna and your ashram. Even most devotees, it's very, very fuzzy. What is your varna? What is your ashram? If we take that as our swadharma. Now, we can take swadharma meaning that I should practice bhakti. But if we say that, then it means there's some other, where did we get that from? We got it from Gurudev. So when I read this verse, what it says to me is that my swadharma is what's been given to me by my Gurudev. And by my Gurudev doesn't only just mean that my Guru Maharaj, when he is physically present, he said this, but my Gurudev who I meet, who I want to meet constantly. My Gurudev who I may meet in the form of the Shastra, my Gurudev who I may meet in the form of some other devotee, my Siksha Guru, some other senior devotee speaking something, some Brahmin speaking something, or maybe even someone off the street, or maybe even theoretically an animal. A cow comes and nudges me that, hey, you should do some service. I want you to scratch me. I want you to give me some brushing. That may be the Lord acting through that. Of course, again, we should understand that we shouldn't be speculative. And the Shastra again repeatedly describes that we should confirm those kind of things with a senior person, with our Siksha Guru, with our Diksha Guru, with some senior devotee, with a Brahman. We should confirm that it should be confirmed with Shastra that this is what is my Swadharma. So there's another verse in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam. There's two verses, and I suspect that this third verse I'm about to quote, which comes, it's 11:20:10. I'm going to quote 11:29 right now. I think that 11:20:10 was probably what your Guru Maharaj is quoting. It's a very famous verse, which is quoted by a lot of Vaishnavas. Anyway, text 9 of the 20th chapter of the 11th canto, Krishna tells Uddhava, tavat karmani kurvita nanavidyeta yavata matkata shravanaduva shraddha yavanam jajayate. That as long as we're not satisfied, we have material desires, we're attracted by karma, by fruitive activities and things, then we have to act according to the regulated principles. And the next verse goes on to explain a little more. Excuse me, so the following chapter, chapter 21, text number 2. Sve sve dikari adhikari ya nishta saguna parikirtitaha viparya yastu dosha shat ubayor esha nishya. Sve sve adhikari ya nishta, that we should be nisha, we should be fixed according to our adhikar, according to our position. But then again, the question comes, what is my adhikar? Well, I can decide. My adhikar is to read Govinda Lilamrita. My adhikar is to chant 2 lakhs a day and just stay in Vrindavan in a bhajan kutir. But then Gurudev comes and says, no, badmashi, idiot rascal, your adhikar is to get married and you should take care of your family and you should live in the West. And my Guru Maharaj sometimes told devotees, you can't chant 64 rounds. You should chant 16 rounds. He told him that sometimes. And it doesn't mean that he didn't want them to chant more rounds, but that he saw that your adhikar, your qualification is this thing. So it's extremely important. And for anybody who's interested, if you remind me, I'd be very happy to share with you a brilliant lecture. Our Guru Maharaj gave a video lecture in, what's the island off the coast of Africa? Mauritius, that he gave in Mauritius, I think in 94, 95, about what is bhakti adhikar, what is karma adhikar, what is gyan adhikar. And he says very clearly something which is a little depressing for a lot of people, that most of you have karma adhikar. And he said something which is a little startling also. He said that this is why Prabhupada told you to distribute books, because you don't have adhikar to do bhajan all day long. You have to do some kind of work. And so you go out and you preach and you distribute books, and that's a wonderful activity. And don't think that distribution of books in itself means karma adhikar. But Prabhupada may have given that to us because we don't have pure bhakti adhikar yet. It's mixed. We have some bhakti adhikar because we have the adhikar to follow the instruction of Gurudev. We have the adhikar to have some desire to do something spiritual, but we don't have the qualification to sit and just do nam bhajan all day long. We have some karma adhikar, and therefore we should act according to that. Is that okay, Brajabanita?
Yes, thank you. More or less, and I just you remind me what he says actually, that he said that someone asked him what is the sinful activities and what is not sinful activities, and then he said that actually when you are acting out of your adhikar, you're acting in sinful activities. That's what he said.
That's a pretty amazing thing, isn't it? There's some very strong examples about this. I remember giving a lecture at the Bhakti Sangam Festival, and oh my God, I told a story from the Mahabharata, and the devotees there kind of freaked out about the story. I'll just tell you very, very briefly the story. It's a long, elaborate story, but just to go over the main points. There was one brahmachari, one devotee who was raised by Vaishnava parents. His father passed away at a young age. And at a young age, he decided household life is Maya. My mother is Maya. And I want to be a brahmachari. And so he left home, and he was traveling everywhere as a brahmachari. I just noticed, Brajabanita and Ujjwala Rasiga, you made a number of comments, so Lila Purushottam Prabhu. I'm going to jump into those in just a moment. Maybe we'll kind of reflect back on some things. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention to the comments in the chat. But anyway, this brahmachari, one day he'd taken bath, and he was such a strict brahmachari. All he had was a pair of kopans, and he only had one pair of kopans because having two pairs is Maya, right? So he'd wash his kopans, and then he would have to dry them out, and he would sit on the bank of the river and do his nam bhajan or whatever. And at some point, suddenly two birds came down, and they picked up his kopans and started flying away. And he got really agitated about that, and he started yelling, and he glared, gave a heavy glance at those birds, and both of the birds fell down dead. And that brahmachari thought, just see, this is my brahmachari tejas. I'm so powerful. And so then later he got dressed, I think first, and he went to the village to do madhukari. And he went to the house of some lady and knocked on the door, and she came, and he said, Bo Mata Bhagavati Bhiksham Dehi, please give me some alms. And she was very excited. Oh my God, this brahmachari is here. I'm so fortunate. I can serve a brahmachari. And she ran to get some things. Just at that time, her husband came home. And when her husband came home, she forgot all about the brahmachari. And she washed her husband's feet, and she said, oh, you're tired? Do you want some nice water? Are you hungry? And she was serving her husband. And she was serving her husband for 20 minutes, half an hour or something. All of a sudden she remembered, oh, there's this brahmachari outside. Oh boy. So immediately she got together some rice and some different foodstuffs for him, and she went out there. And the brahmachari was really angry. And he glared at her. He gave her the same look that he gave to the birds. And that lady, she just looked at him and she said, look, don't think I'm like those two innocent birds that you killed. If you're hungry, take this food. If not, just go away. And that brahmachari was very shocked. He said, well, how did you know about those birds? Nobody was there. I didn't tell anybody. And she said, well, I have some mystic cities because my husband's a Vaishnava and I serve him and I love him. And because of my service to my husband, this is what Mahabharata says, I have this mystic city that I'm Trikala Gyan, that I know past, present, and future. Wow, that's far out. And so he said, well, please accept me as my guru. Mahabharata is saying this. This brahmachari is asking the lady to be his guru. And she said, no, I'm not your guru. Your guru is, I think his name was Kashyapa, if I recall correctly. He's such and such person in this other distant village. You should go there. He's your guru. Okay, great. He's like confused. So he went to this other village and he asked about this person. And they said, yeah, he's got a shop. And he's thinking, a shopkeeper? I thought he's a sadhu. Yeah, he has a shop over on the corner. He went to the shop and it was a butcher shop. Brajabani has heard this story before. And he was like, oh my God, I think I've got the wrong guy. And he went there and the guy told him, yeah, I know that lady sent you and the two birds and everything. He knew. And he said, well, how did you know that? He said, well, I'm Trikala Gyan. I have this I have this understanding because I serve my parents who are Vaishnavas. And the guy was really confused by this time, the brahmachari. And that man told him, he said, anyway, you want to come to my house? We can have some prasadam. And the guy said, well, I don't know if nothing personal, but I don't know if I want to eat anything from your shop. No. I'm a pure vegetarian. He said, I don't eat this stuff. He said, but I was raised in this family. There's nothing else that I could do other than being a butcher. That's my swadharma. But I'm a pure vegetarian. And after I finish my work, I go home and take a bath. And he was worshiping Lakshmi Narayan like that. He was worshiping deities of the Lord. He was a Vaishnav. And I only offer pure vegetarian things. He said, I don't kill animals either. Someone else did it, and I buy the flesh from them or whatever, and it's an unfortunate thing. So I told this story, and I remember those Russian-speaking devotees there in Ukraine at the Bhakti Sangam, some of them kind of really freaked out. It was really hard for them. And at one point, a very amazing thing happened. Someone raised their hand, and they said, they came to me afterwards, and he said that, that story's about me. He said that before I was a devotee, my family, I grew up, my family were butchers. And I became a devotee. And there was no other occupation that I could have. There was no other way to make money. So I had to run the butcher shop. So I ran the butcher shop. He says, but what I do, I put a plate, I have some prasadam sweets out there. And I offer prasadam to all the people who come to buy meat. And I also have Prabhupada's books. And I gave them Prabhupada's books. So we have this mundane idea of what is sin and what is piety. And so my understanding, Brajabhanita, what your Guru Maharaj is saying is a very deep thing. And I've seen this said other places too in Shastra. I can't recall a shloka or pramana for it, but I remember seeing this, that if we act, well, actually it's said in the Skanda Purana, Adharma Bibhavat Krishna Padushanti Skula Street. No, that's a different verse. Let me find the verse. I should know this verse. Very wonderful verse. Jiva Goswami quotes it in Bhakti Sandarbha, where he says that, that someone who, I don't know how fast I can find this. I'm going to try. He says that someone, I'm just giving the purport to the verse, I'm trying to find the shloka, that someone who neglects Krishna, then their dharma becomes pop. And was that Krishna quoting? Yeah, it's quoted in Mahabharata also. And someone who neglects Krishna, their so-called dharma becomes pop, where someone who's worshiping Krishna, their so-called pop becomes dharma. And there's some What's that?
Manimitam
Manimitam kritam papam api dharmaya kalpade mamanaditya dharmopi papam shan prabhavata. Thank you, Krishna. And that's the slok. So that's our science. It's a very deep thing to understand, a very difficult thing to understand. And it's not something that we want to go run around and speak about in public, that you can, steal something. And if you really do it for Krishna, that's bhakti. We can't imitate that. And we've seen, there were different examples of devotees in the 70s and 80s in America who sometimes they wanted to save money, and they would go and steal some shoes or something like that, and they would get arrested. And they thought this is some kind of transcendental thing. It's not a transcendental thing. It was a nonsense Mayic thing, and they caused some big problems. But if you're on that kind of platform, Jayananda Prabhu, he was very, very simple. He just worked hard for Prabhupada. And at one point, his jeans were becoming a little X-rated. You could see through them, and he needed to have some new pants. But he just couldn't tolerate the idea of spending Prabhupada's money on pants. So he went into some shop, and he pulled a pair of pants on over his existing pants. And he went walking out of the shop, and they caught him, and they arrested him. And he went to jail, and later he went to court. And when he went to court, Jayananda Prabhu, he practically cried. And he told the judge, he said, "Sir, I'm a monk, and I just can't tolerate wasting the money of my spiritual master like this." And he was so sincere, it melted the heart of the judge, and they dropped the charges. They let him do that. I would suggest that he had adhikar for something like that. But if we try to imitate that in the name of this verse, manimitam kritam papam api dharmaya kalpate, that I can do some pop and I can do it for Krishna, then that's bhakti, that's imitation. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, maybe in a sense, but I want to underline this point that what is sin and what is dharma? Dharma is we should follow what Guru has given us. And Gurudev will give different instructions to different devotees at different times. And we shouldn't try to imitate some other person, even though we may think I can do what they're supposed to do better, or my dharma may seem like a lower dharma. We should follow what Gurudev has given us to do and have faith in that. Is that okay, Brajabanita?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Your Guru Maharaj's talk was in Russian?
Yes, it was a Russian class. Even was not class. It was kind of questions and answers.
Mm-hmm.
So it just,
I was going to say, you could maybe share that section in a video link or something.
I will try to find it, because, I'm listening, everything that comes out of him, I'm listening. So I just need to remember what it was. Okay, thank you.
Brajabanita is a cat lady who does makeup for people, actors and things, but she's just listening to Krishna Katha like practically 24 hours a day. And that's a symptom of a liberated soul. So if someone tries to say, "Oh, cats, they're non-vegetarian creatures," or this or that, and you try to judge someone for some external thing, you may make a big mistake. Thank you, Brajabanita. I hope I someday I can get the same kind of taste for Krishna Katha that you have. Hare Krishna. So it's really late again, and I think we should stop there. Also because those of us here, we have this whole group of devotees here in Jagannath Puri, and everybody's kind of feeling a little under the weather, a little sick, and it's 7:30 at night and a little late. So I'm really sorry. I've got Brinda Sundari. You wrote some brilliant questions. I've got them in mind. And I think Tri Yuga Prabhu also wrote some questions. So you guys are next on our list. Do I have permission? Is everybody happy if we continue this for another week, at least in the same kind of format? Questions and answers, and other devotees can ask questions too if you have something.
Yes. For me you have.
Wonderful.
Okay, I don't want to go a lot longer. Let me just go over real quick some of the written chat comments, and then if anybody's exploding, they really want to make some comment or something, then you can make a comment. And maybe we'll start with Brinda Sundar. Brinda Sundar, do you have to go? Are you okay?
No, I'm okay.
All right. So I think Ujjwala Resigar already checked out. She had to go. So Gora Prabhu says, Dandavats to all of you. He's laying in bed with the baby. It's 1:40 in the morning. He's a madman. Is Gora still here online with everybody here? Yeah, he is. Gora, you're mad. The Hare Krishna devotees are so astonishing. It's like Gauri Thai Prabhu. We're giving these Bhagavatam classes in the morning. It's 2:00 in the morning. And he's up watching the class, you know, it's crazy. Hare Krishna. You guys are just really, really amazing. And Leela Purushottam Prabhu says, you're the real hero, Gora Prabhu. Yes, I totally agree. Krishna Kunz commented, oh, Bhagavatam 2:4, 140. Brihad Bhagavatam read 2:4, 141. Translation, they have assumed forms of colors and shapes similar to those of the Lord they have worshipped as most dear. Commentary, this verse indicates that Vaikuntha devotees who appear in non-human forms, such as those of some animal or plant, have worshipped similar forms of Lord Narayan, who by his expansion appeared in those same species. These devotees, each in his own way, have realized the perfection of Sarupya, having attained forms that look just like those of the Supreme Lord. That's pretty cool. What a great reference. Thank you, Krishna Kun. Krishna Kun's been going through Brihad Bhagavatamrita really painstakingly with Niranjan Maharaj. And then Brajabanita commenting back one of our previous comments with Goloka Vrindavan. Your English is not very good here. I'm sorry, Brajabanita. But Goloka Vrindavan isn't a part of the spiritual world. Gokul Vrindavan isn't a part of the spiritual world. Yes, it is. And no, it's not. And that's our point. Vrindavan here in this material world is not in Uttar Pradesh. And Jagannath Puri is not in Orissa. But these are parts of the spiritual world. This is the way the Dham works. I would recommend to everybody that if you want to read something more about this, there's a beautiful essay written by Srila Shivaram Maharaj in the beginning of Navabraja Mandala, where he speaks about how the Dham manifests in different ways. It's the spiritual world. So Gokul Vrindavan is part of the spiritual world, but it's a part of the spiritual world which manifests here. Ujjwala Rasiga says something nice about the questions. She offers pranams to everybody. Leela Purushottam Prabhu has commented. Also, 11:20:26 is almost the same as the third one you discussed now. Sway Dukana, yeah. That's exactly discussed in 11:20:26 in terms of sin and piety. Great, nice comment, Leela Purushottam. So, Brajabanita, you should, actually, I'll even make a note of that so we don't lose that. Brajabanita, that's the answer to your question. You can look up 11:20:26 also. Your Guru Maharaj is quoting one of those verses. So, okay, everybody, anybody exploding and want to make any comments? I'd really like to hear a little feedback from somebody. How about Brinda Sundari? Do you have any feedback, any reflections or anything? I know you have questions too, but not right now.
No, I don't, but it looks like Leela Purushottam Prabhu does. He just put his hand up.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry. But I would also like to hear from Vrinda Sundari Mataji.
She's got some good things to say. That's why they stuck you with being the temple president, you know.
I don't have anything to say.
You open your mouth too many times and you had good stuff coming out, so people like it. No reflections really from you today? You don't have to.
No, I don't really have anything.
Okay. How about Maya Porchanda? Are you still here? No, he's not. How about Tri Yuga Prabhu, since we don't get your association very often? Any reflection from you? And I know you have questions also. We're not going to them right now, but just some reflection, anything about today, something you liked?
Oh, it's a little bit hard because I like everything what you said. A lot of nice stories, and I'm just a little bit about this this story about this brahmachari and the birds and the butcher.
I remember about that story. One of the first times I ever told that story was in Ukraine, in Megalinovka, and Niranjan Maharaj was sitting in the class. And afterwards, he came to me and he just loved it. He was like glowing. He was so happy that he wanted the brahmacharis to hear that story. I just told the first part of it about the brahmachari and the housewife. I didn't tell the second part at that point, but Maharaj liked it very much.
So
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you.
I just really love this story, and I a little bit recognize because you said somebody that you recognize he's a butcher in this Ukraine. I don't know where you give the lecture. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Somebody
the Bhakti
did a lecture
Sangam,
and somebody, the Bhakti Sangam festival, and I'm just like a little bit realized like maybe I am the brahmachari who is just seafood for everybody. So,
but you're better than a brahmachari. You have a good wife. Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a really powerful thing for you. I'll never forget that, when a devotee coming to me and telling me that story and telling me how in their butcher shop where they sell meat, they also had a plate of prasadam. They would offer to everybody, and they had Prabhupada's books. It was just, oh my God, it was a very special thing for me to hear.
In just a little bit down the street where we are live, is have one. Oh, sorry.
Prabhuji's saying something. You can't hear him. Go ahead, Triyuga Prabhu. Can you turn the volume on, Krishna?
Just down in the street where we are live, down in the street, having one shop. They is a grocery shop. They are selling everything like milk, meat,
eggs, and
vegetables, everything. But in where they have vegetables, have some old books. But it's not a bookshop and not an old bookshop. It's like a grocery store. But they have some books, and the Bhagavad Gita is there also. They are some old copies.
Yeah, I think part of the lesson with all this is that we should not be proud and think that the way that I worship the Lord is the best or the only way, and that someone else, maybe that's the best thing they'll be able to do in this life. They're a shopkeeper, but they've got Bhagavad Gita in their shop. And they're keeping that Bhagavad Gita in the shop may be more dear to the Lord, that activity, than some initiated devotees' activities. We don't have a right to judge that. That's a great story, Triyuga Prabhu. Thank you. Okay, anybody else who's bursting with anything? Leela Purushottam, usually bursting. You want to share anything?
I just wanted to share one thing. As you were answering this question to Tirthakara Prabhu about the listening certain like to have some likings for certain topics, if it can indicate our Svarupa. So it just immediately rang in my head, because that was one of the favorite quotes of Indra Prabhu that he always told us to inspire us. But I could very much relate to your comment on that it might be one must be certainly very careful about that. But he always used this quote from Srila Prabhupada. It's Adi Leela 4:34, fourth chapter and 34 verse. And in the purport, it's actually the quote of Bhagavatam Anugrahaya Bhaktanam, the 10:33-36. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, special natural appreciation of the descriptions of a particular pastime of Godhead indicates the constitutional position of a living entity. That was just...
That's the pramana. That's great. Thank you very much. Great comment. Thank you, Prabhu. Any other comments?
No, thank you. I mean, just except for the whole appreciation of everything what we could hear and your answers.
Thank you, Prabhuji. How about Gorni Tai Prabhu? Do you have anything you want to share real quick?
Just a quick topic. So,
you're kind of going in and out.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, kind of. It's a little hard.
Cool topic. It's impressed me very much. So to put my Guru Maharaj into the center of my life. So that's thank you very much to me, and that's the life of me, my bhakti, my practice. Maharaj gives
Okay,
me.
no, I don't think I can hardly hear you, and I know the devotees here in the room, for example, can't. Saying that keeping Gurudev in the center of my life is my everything. You just really appreciated that comment. I don't know, somehow there's some like ringing or something too. I'm saying. Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. Anybody else who's here? Natalia or anybody else? Any reflections or anything? Okay. Anybody else here in the room? That would be really exciting. Jaguar? Yeah, come on.
I don't have any particular reflections, I don't think.
Okay. Anybody else? Krishna Khan?
I have.
Good talking to you.
I was just. This is really weird. I hate this. I was just really struck by this comment that sometimes we keep certain things, we think of them as really inaccessible for us. And there is always hope against hope, and there is always mercy. So this is what I'm walking away with. Don't this thing, I hate it.
All right. Okay. Thank you all very much. And so I think we're going to go ahead and go out. Gaura Prabhu made a nice comment. He said that he fell asleep after about half an hour or so, but he just woke up and caught you mentioning my name again. We love you, Gaura Prabhu. It's not an easy thing to raise children and trying to hear Krishna Katha at the same time. Natalia comments, I'd just like to thank everybody for the opportunity to listen to these discussions. Well, thank everybody here very much. And we're just waiting for all of you to come to Jagannath Puri sometime. Be with us. We're having a good time with everybody here. We had the police come today and had to interview everybody. It's quite dramatic. Wanting to see everybody's passport and treating us like we're a hotel or something because we've got 6 or 8 foreign devotees here. Is a little exciting. Anyway, thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Binda ki jai, Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo, Vancha Kopa Vischa, Kripa Sindhu Vacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Monama. The Kali Vaishnava ki jai.
These are really nice answers. Wow.
Nice with the devotees. This is our life, if we think that our life is becoming a big preacher, a big speaker or something, and we're talking about some friend of ours who sometimes does kirtan and just talks or something.
It's still on, Prabhu.
I don't like that.
It's still on.
We're still seeing you.
Yeah, it's still going on.